Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we continue reading from the Bhagavad-Gita as it is, chapter 15, the Yoga of the Supreme Person, text number 16. How many days did you spend on the previous verse? One time? Two times? Three times? Two times. Prabhupada has quoted this verse very often. So now, text 16. Dvā imau puruṣau loke kṣaraś cākṣara eva ca kṣara sarvāṇi bhūtāni kūṭa-stho kṣara ucyate. Word for word meaning: dvau, two, imau, this, puruṣau, living entities, loke, in the world, kṣaraḥ, fallible, ca, and akṣara, infallible, eva, certainly, ca, and kṣara, fallible, sarvāṇi, all, bhūtāni, living entities, kūṭa-sthaḥ, in oneness, akṣara, infallible, ucyate, is said. There are two classes of beings, the fallible and the infallible. In the material world, every living entity is fallible, and in the spiritual world, every living entity is called infallible. Purport. As already explained, the Lord in his incarnation as Vyasadeva compiled the Vedanta Sutra. Here the Lord is giving, in summary, the contents of the Vedanta Sutra. He says that the living entities who are innumerable can be divided into two classes, the fallible and the infallible. The living entities are eternally separated parts and parcels of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When they are in contact with the material world, they are called jiva bhuta. And the Sanskrit words given here, kṣara, sarvāṇi, bhūtāni, mean that they are fallible. Those who are in oneness with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, however, are called infallible. Oneness does not mean that they have no individuality, but that there is no disunity. They are all agreeable to the purpose of the creation. Of course, in the spiritual world, there is no such thing as creation. But since the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as stated in the Vedanta Sutra, is the source of all emanations, that conception is explained. So there are two kinds of living beings, fallible and infallible. Fallible means when the jivas have come in contact with the material energy, they become under the jurisdictions of the external energy, Bahiranga Shakti. The three modes of material nature are considered like the ropes that bind the material creations of the Supreme Lord, and that for the living entities who come in contact, they become succumb under her grips, which means that they take different kinds or different forms of bodies depending on their activities and their desires. So fallible, right from the post of Lord Brahma, whoever will take that form. Of course, sometimes Lord Brahma's position, when there is no qualified jiva, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, He takes that position temporarily until a jiva becomes qualified. But the Supreme Lord is not fallible. He is infallible. He is infallible. Infallible means the Supreme Lord's body never changed. It's the same. Manifest sometimes and sometimes unmanifest. It's like Prabhupada was saying in one of the lectures that by the time that the Supreme Lord performs His Leela in Dwarka, He's about 126 years old. And in the battle of Kurukshetra is around 90 plus. This is what Prabhupada was saying. But he looks like a teenage boy, or at the utmost 25 years old. But he's much older than Arjuna at that time. So Krishna's body is infallible. Also, the living entities within, this is one of the commentaries of the Acharyas. The living entities within the body is also infallible, never change. Infallible means no change. The soul never changes, right? It just becomes covered up. The living entities have the same quality as the Supreme Lord. Satchit Ananda, full of knowledge, bliss, and eternity. But the difference is that when the living entities come in contact with the material energy, then they become covered up. And therefore, their body also is not eternal. That is what I mean by fallible. Fallible. That means the body that we have right now is temporary. Chaitanya's body will change after some time. It says that according to medical research or findings, every 12 years our body changes. So from when you took birth up to 12 years old, when you turn 13, you're a teenager already. That means your boyhood or childhood is gone. Right? Your childhood. Then, from 12 to 24, that's another change. Complete. The whole cells, all the cells of our body changes. And then, from 24 till 36, changes again. Then 36 to 48, 48 to 60. You were completely different. Huh? Huh? No, old is 70. Prabhupada says old age starts at 70. Who's 70 years old here? Oh boy, this is like old. Say, oh, 70. You're 70 because you're 9 months inside the womb of your mother. Okay, so when you take birth, you're not 1 year. You're not zero. Actually, you're 1 year old already, practically. It looks like we have an old age club here. Don't worry. The soul is eternally young. It's only the body that changes. Do you feel the same when you were like, now and then when you were young? You feel the same inside? Yeah, do you feel inside the same? Of course, because the soul is the same. It doesn't change. I feel the same when I was like a young boy. I'm almost 60 also. So that's what I mean by fallible. Fallible means changing the body. From Lord Brahma, he dies also. He never lives eternally. When Hiranyakashipu asked a boon that I may become eternal, he says, well, how can I give you this? I am also have to die. How can you give something which you don't have? You can only give something if you have, even a small amount. And Lord Brahma lives for what? 100 years. But his 100 years is compared to our 311 trillion years. His 24 hours is 8.6 billion years of our time. That's a long time, isn't it? But he still has to die. And even an insect, some insects, they live also for a few seconds. Some insects, they will take birth at night and then they will die by sunrise. And that is their 100 years. Okay? So it's relative. Some insects, few seconds, they live. After that, they die. Bacteria. That is their 100 years. They are infallible. That means the body, which is made of gross and subtle elements. Mamayvam so jiva loke jiva bhuta sanatana. We are fragmental parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord. We are also complete, like Lord Krishna is complete. But we are fragmental, complete. That means we are parts and parcels, but we are still complete because the jiva is eternal, full of knowledge and bliss. But it becomes covered up, coming in contact with the material energy. So it says here, when they are in contact with the material world, they are called jiva bhuta. Jiva bhuta sanatana. Jiva bhuta, but sanatana, eternal. I was thinking of something else. But the Supreme Lord, his pastimes in the material world, he takes birth also. He takes birth. Of course, we never heard that Matsya took birth or Kurma. You've heard? No, it did just come like Nisinghadev. They just came. But in human form, the Supreme Lord, when he came as Lord Ramachandra, he took birth also. Who's his father? Dasarat. Huh? Who's his mother? Huh? No, mother. Kausalya. Yes. And when Radharani also came, well, she doesn't have actually a mother and father. Mother Kirtida and Bishabhanu found her in a lotus flower, on top of a golden lotus flower. She's been carried by a witch called Putana, not the same Putana that Lord Krishna killed. Two of them, Chandravali and Radharani, being carried. But no father and mother, really. But when Lord Krishna came, he manifests himself in a human-like form. But then when he appeared in Mathura, is full-size form, four-arm form, Lord Krishna. But then immediately he turned himself into like a baby-sized child. Mother Yasoda gave birth. So it seems to be that, the impersonalists will say, Your God also took birth. He also grew up. And also there was this pastime when the Supreme Lord left his body. He was shot on the hill by Jara. So he's also infallible. But that's not true. This is just to wind up the pastimes of the Supreme Lord. The Supreme Lord is infallible. So there is a difference now. And those devotees who also, it says here, those who are in oneness with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, however, are called infallible. They're also infallible. The pure devotees of the Lord, like Srila Prabhupada. Well, one may say, well, your guru also left his body, so he must be fallible. Yes or no? Yeah, you may say, but Prabhupada's form, look, his eternal, this is his, like for us, this is his eternal form. Like his murti in the mandir, in the temple room, that is his eternal form. Sometimes people are asking, Maharaj, when is he going to move? When is he going to move? Because they think he's very alive, which is true. Prabhupada is very alive. You go there, you pray to him, you offer your obeisances, you're offering obeisances to Prabhupada. There is no difference between the murti form of the Supreme Lord's pure devotees and his form, material. Seemingly is material, but actually it is spiritual. Because the more you use your senses, your body, your mind, your intelligence, everything for the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and his devotees, then it becomes spiritualized. It becomes infallible. Infallible. This is philosophy here. Okay? Or someone may say, oh, pure devotee of the Lord has a toothache. That is like, you cannot avoid that. That's part of being in the material world. But he's completely spiritualized. So, in the spiritual world, there is no such thing as creation. It is eternal, only in the material world. But since the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as stated in the Vedanta Sutra, is the source of all emanations, that conception is explained. So everyone in the spiritual world, they are all infallible. Both the living entities, moving or non-moving, and the Supreme Lord Himself, they are all infallible. In the material world, when the pure devotees come or descend to help the conditioned souls to go back home, back to Godhead, by waking them up. Just like this morning, did you remember the quote that Srila Prabhupada says? Wake up! Be Krishna conscious! This is the preachings of the sadhus. So the sadhus, they are also infallible because they are in one with the Supreme Lord. Not in one with existence, in one with purpose. You follow? Yes? Continuation. According to the statement of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna, there are two classes of living entities. Sometimes Srila Prabhupada will say, oh yeah, there are two classes of men, the cheaters and the cheated. Or Nityabadhas and Nityamukta. Nityabadha means the eternally conditioned souls, and the Nityamukta, the eternally liberated souls. The Vedas give evidence of this, so there is no doubt about it. The living entities who are struggling in this world with the mind and five senses have their material bodies which are changing. As long as a living entity is conditioned, his body changes due to contact with matter. Matter is changing, so the living entity appears to be changing. But in the spiritual world, the body is not made of matter. Therefore, there is no change. In the spiritual world, the body is made of chinmaya ras. It's the same as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is eternal, full of knowledge and bliss. The trees, the animals, the cows, Ananda Chinmaya Ras. It's full of bliss. Ananda Chinmaya Ras. The waterfalls, the sand, everything. Even a speck of sand is fully conscious in the spiritual world. The Supreme Lord's eternal associates, they're all in the same category. Their body never changes. It's eternal. This is the difference. And the difference, our body changes in the material world. We take birth. We're going to read it here later on. Because it is not made of matter. It is completely spiritual. That's why eternally, Srimati Radharani is like 15-year-old girl and Lord Krishna is 16-year-old. Lalita. Saki is 14 years, 8 months, and like 27 days or something. Eternally. Never change, never grow. One day old. How is that? Well, that is the nature of the spiritual world. Krishna is eternally like a 16-year-old boy. That's it. No 1 minute more older or 1 second more older. Eternally, that's it. That is their form. So each and every one of us also in our original swarup or form, it is covered up. Hello. It's covered up. But we have our spiritual form in a sleeping state. It is there. And how do we come to the point to have it been like waking up? That means we have to follow the process. This body is not our eternal form. It is foolishly, mistakenly, concoctedly, speculatively that one would like to live as long as possible in this body. That's why sometimes big men, when they die, they will freeze their body. They put him in a freezer, right? And thinking that, oh, when the time comes, the technology or the science will come, they will just inject something to the body and the body will become alive. You've heard of that? Like in Russia, who is that very... Lenin. No, Lenin. In China is Mao Zedong. In the Philippines, they have Marcos. They put him also in frozen state. Lenin, there is a Lenin Square in Moscow. We've been there many times. It says that his body is there embalmed in a frozen condition, so that when the scientists will find out one day, they'll inject something to his body and he'll become alive. But no, come on. He's already rotten inside. Outside he may look like fresh and smiling. But inside it's finished. But in the spiritual world we have this spiritual form. Every one of us. You can be a pet of Krishna. Oh, you'll be lucky to be a pet of Krishna. To reach Goloka Vrindavan is very special. I was reading the other day. Everyone who dies in Vrindavan, Boma Vrindavan, even you are the most sinful person, and when you die, you go to Vaikuntha, not to Goloka Vrindavan. To go to Goloka Vrindavan, you need to uncover, you have to revive, you have to develop love for God, love for Krishna. So sometimes people, or even devotees, they died in Vrindavan and they have not fully developed their love or relationship with Krishna, and not necessarily they go to Goloka Vrindavan. That is very special. To go to Goloka, you have to learn, you have to follow in the footsteps in one of the inhabitants of Vrindavan. Learn from them how to serve the Supreme Lord. But if you have not learned that, and you died in Vrindavan, you go to Vaikuntha. But to go to Vaikuntha is not so easy. But it becomes easy if you die in Vrindavan. But if you die in Delhi, not necessarily you'll go to Vaikuntha, unless you are a devotee of Lord Vishnu or Lord Narayan. So, yes, we have eternal form, and when you reach that level of attaining that, then you become infallible. That means no more death. Yat gatbana nivartante taddama paramamama. You don't come back. But Prabhupada says, why you don't come back? Because you remember what happened downstairs. You remember what happened in the material world. And it's full of miseries and suffering, so you don't want to come back anymore. The living entities who are struggling in this world with the mind and five senses have their material bodies which are changing. And it says that every second also our cells, our body cells are changing every moment, but complete every 12 years. As long as a living entity is conditioned, his body changes due to the contact with matter. Matter is changing, so the living entity appears to be changing. But the soul never changed. The living entity appears. See, this is the misconception again. We are changing, but the soul is not changing. One may say, oh, you are changing your body, that means the soul also is changing. The soul never changed. Never change. It remains as it is, just like water. Water, what is the condition of water? Of course, sometimes it changes, like becomes solid, becomes ice. But it goes back again to its natural, constitutional position, liquid. But the living entities, no. It appears to be changing because the body changes. Sometimes you're fat, sometimes you're thin. But the soul doesn't become fat or doesn't become thin. Matter is changing. As long as a living entity is conditioned, his body changes due to contact with matter. Matter is changing. So the living entity appears to be changing. But in the spiritual world, the body is not made of matter. Therefore, there is no change. You're a tree all the time. But the trees are very happy in the spiritual world because they're waiting for Lord Krishna to come under their shades. This is how they serve Krishna and his associates. In the material world, the living entity undergoes 6 changes: birth, growth, duration, reproduction, then dwindling and vanishing. Vanishing means dying. These are the changes of the material body. But in the spiritual world, the body does not change. There is no old age, there is no birth, there is no death. It says also in the heavenly planets, there is no hospital there. There is no COVID. There's no COVID over there, only here. But the whole material world is called the planet of death, Mrityuloka. In the heavenly planets, they don't get sick. They just die. But they change their body there also. These are the changes of the material body. But it doesn't look like they're really getting old. You know, like wrinkles in their body. No. Looking young, but they die. These are the changes of the material body. But in the spiritual world, the body does not change. There is no old age, there is no birth, there is no death. So these different pastimes of the Supreme Lord, we were talking the other day, these Naimitika Lila, occasional pastimes. There is no Dwarka in the spiritual world, where Lord Krishna married 16,108 wives. That is only in the material world. Over there, Krishna and the gopis. In Goloka, we're talking about Goloka. There is no Mother Devaki giving birth in the prison house. There is no Kamsa. No, there is no Indra. There is no Brahma. But they are there in their original form. It's like Uddhava, his eternal form is a creeper. A creeper, like a plant or some kind of weed. But that is his form. I wonder what will be our form. If Uddhava, who is like the right-hand man, the assistant of Lord Krishna, he is the advisor of Lord Krishna. He is the last person who saw Krishna before Krishna depart. He is a creeper. What to say of us? If we are even one speck of dust in Vrindavan, we'll be happy. Maybe Krishna will step on our head as a dust. Just imagine this, huh? These great personalities, this is their form. Even Lord Brahma, he says, I don't mind even as a blade of grass within the boundary of Braj, or even immediate outside of the boundary of Braj. This is Lord Brahma. How about you, Chaitanya? What are you in the spiritual world? Unimaginable. But don't think about what is your eternal form. That will come when you become purified, when you become ready. First, we follow Prabhupada's instructions, Guru Maharaj's instructions. Chant Hare Krishna, follow the 4 regulative principles, do our sadhana, do practical service during the day, and before you go to sleep, if you can read some passages from the Krishna book, then, hope against hope, we'll be able to reach that goal. There all exist in oneness. Kṣara sarvāṇi bhūtāni, all living entity who has come in contact with matter, beginning from the first created being, Brahma, down to a small ant is changing its body. Therefore, they are all fallible. Okay? In the spiritual world, however, they are always liberated in oneness. In oneness means in service to the Supreme Lord. Not in oneness like merging or sayujya. Very interesting, very philosophical text. We stop here now. Are there any question or comment? Kṣara. Hold on. You have the mic. Kṣara means fallible and akṣara, infallible. Remember those? Okay? At least we can remember something. Yes.
We have been told in some lectures that our actual body is there.
Dead?
Our actual body is there in Golok Vrindavan. But because of our material desires, we have come here into this material body. If we have heard this in our lectures, but it is dormant, and we have to go back to our original body.
This is a very, very interesting question. If I'm gonna tell you, according to the acharyas, but we follow what Prabhupada says, okay? According to the acharyas, we've never been there. Never been in the spiritual world. Huh! That's why I'm telling you. It's very interesting. Because if you're there, you will not come back. You will not come down here. But we are eternal, the living entities. Prabhupada says, we want to be happy separate from Krishna. That's why we are here. This is his statement. We want to be happy separate from Krishna. That's why we are here. But he didn't say that we were in the spiritual world. See the difference now? Because if you were there, this is a special case with Jai and Vijay because they have some mission to do. They have to do some fighting, right? With Varaha. They have to take birth 3 lives because Lord Vishnu or Lord Narayan wanted to perform, or he wanted to exhibit his fighting spirit. But our teachings is that don't worry whether you are there or not. Don't worry about it. Just go back to the spiritual world because there is no happiness here. Your body, spiritual form, is in like a dormant state. Dormant state means it's like it is there, but it's not waking up. It's sleeping state. So don't worry about this now. This is a very controversial. In the Jaiva Dharma, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, you should read this book, Jaiva Dharma. So ultimately, we are in Tatastha Shakti. Okay, what's Tatastha? We're a marginal energy. We are not like the eternal associates of the Supreme Lord, like the cowherd boys or the cowherd girls. We're not like that. Okay? Because if you're like that, then you will not be here suffering a toothache or feeling hungry or having a migraine. Okay? Feeling pain, sorrow, joy, and this temporary nature. We are not in that category. Prabhupada is different. Prabhupada is different. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur is different. Bhaktivinoda Thakur is different. They're not like conditioned souls like us. They are from the spiritual world and they came. They're like manjaris. As I told you, Uddhava is a creeper. So who are you? Who am I? If he is a creeper, he can just imagine what are we? Hey, Vaikuntapati Prabhu? Yes? So don't go that far. No, it's beyond. First, we should do our sadhana properly. Decrease our material desires. Control the mind. Control the senses. Engage in Krishna Bhakti without any self-interest. Then one day we will understand this. It is another topic. There is some contradiction in here, but there are more in the side that Hare Krishna. Okay?
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhu, as once one becomes a pure devotee,
Yes.
so he is different from this body.
No, your body becomes pure, spiritualized. But you may get sick also. Because body is material. But your spirit is, you completely awaken your consciousness. Like Prabhupada, when the Kaviraj saw the condition of Prabhupada, he says, oh, he's not an ordinary soul. Because the pain that one is experiencing in that condition, he will not be able to bear it. But Prabhupada is still translating the very last few days. He was still fully conscious, giving purport to the 13th chapter of the 10th canto. For us, we'll be like, one toothache. You cannot even, you don't want to see anyone, you don't want to talk with anyone, you just want to be alone and you want to take a lot of painkillers. Yes?
So pure devotee definition, what is the pure devotee definition?
Pure devotee means you are always thinking of Krishna 24 hours a day. Not the body, not the form. Do you understand now what a pure devotee means? Pure devotee means his only desire is to please Krishna 24 hours. Please his devotees 24 hours. Help others 24 hours. Serve the Vaishnavas 24 hours. All the time. Consciousness is consciousness. It's not the form that you become like superhuman. You can lift, 10 cars all at the same time. No, that's not a pure devotee. That's not the meaning.
We have to see Krishna in everyone's heart. Krishna is in everyone's heart. So we have to see that. And then we can serve the person.
Yeah, well, by understanding knowledge. That's why we study Bhagavad-Gita every day. Your knowledge becomes purified. When your knowledge becomes purified, your heart becomes purified. Krishna manifests in your heart. Then you see everyone in equal vision. This is a learned man. A learned man doesn't mean he has like 10 PhDs and he doesn't know how to behave properly. He's a womanizer, he's a meat eater, he's a drunkard, but I have 10 PhDs in my hand. You just understand Bhagavad-Gita, one book. Study, learn it, practice it, give it to others, you're a pure devotee. Okay?
Thank you. One more, just like the soul.
Like the soul?
You said the soul is eternal, it doesn't change.
Yeah, inside.
Inside.
It's the same person, the living entity.
The person is same. Now just like this boy is having his soul.
Yeah, Chaitanya will grow up. Tomorrow he's 1 day old.
Yeah.
The body.
Body.
The body.
But the soul also, the cells changes, his mind is changing.
No. You purify the senses. Then you uncover the nature of the real self. Right now, the soul is covered up by the modes of material nature because we identify with the body. The mind is impure, thinking of many sinful desires. To enjoy the material energy is sinful. Because that is not our nature. Whatever material energy that comes to us, we should offer back to Krishna. Then it becomes spiritualized. Okay. So we grow up in Krishna consciousness by understanding more and more who we are and who is Krishna and what is my relationship with him and what shall I do about it. That is growing up in Krishna consciousness. Growing up doesn't mean getting taller materially. Conscious-wise, we should really like waking up and growing up. Okay?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
In introduction of Bhagavad,
Whoa. Come here, Prabhuji, because the echo.
in the introduction of Prabhupada, in the introduction of Gita, Prabhupada ji have given a man who can qualify to go Golokha.
Yes.
He quoted a slok of Gita.
Mm-hmm.
निर्माण मोहाजित संग दोषा अध्यात्म नित्या विनिवर्त कामा द्वंद्व विमुक्त सुख दुख संज्ञा गच्छन्ति अमूढ़ा पदम अव्ययम तत् अमूढ़ा पदम अव्ययम.
Translation?
Translation: निर्माण मोह. I do not want any respect from my colleagues.
Oh, free from false ego.
Jit sanga dosa. I should have a women association. I should have left the women association.
Unwanted association.
Men, women, jit sanga, adhyatam nita, every time chanting the holy name. Adhyatam, there are 6 things in the adhyatam nitya. Dham, Gun, and 2-3 more.
Okay.
Leela,
Sure.
Adhyatma, Vinivart Kama.
Okay. How come this becomes like this?
Who has become
Oh! Harbo. How come it becomes like this?
Vinivart Kama.
Hey. Became too loud.
Who has no material desire.
Yes.
Sanga Gachanti Amudha Padama.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Okay? Anything else? Shall we stop here? Srila Prabhupada ki.